I love IBM.
Thank you. I love IBM too.
That's Deb Pimentel, IBM Canada's president and GM of technology. She's speaking with a robot named Pepper at the IBM Canada Software Lab in Markham, Ontario.
The IBM Canada lab is an amazing place to work.
It's Canada's largest software development lab and IBM's third largest in the world. In November, Deb gave me a tour. Here, Canadian ingenuity is on full display. Some of the world's top scientists, computer specialists, and problem solvers are developing cutting-edge technical solutions for clients, not only here in Canada, but around the world. On the tour, Deb introduced me to Vince Pasquantonio in a part of the lab known as Area 631.
This is our incubation space for our development organizations. So 631 stands for 6 innovators, 3 months, 1 breakthrough. And what we do is it's open to everyone in the lab. Sometimes when you work for a large company, things move a little bit slow, right, when you follow the formal process. Yeah. But we throw the team in here.
Break some eggs here.
We say there's no rules.
That's what we're doing.
Break some eggs.
Yeah.
Forget that you work for IBM. There's no rules. Come out with a breakthrough and idea.
That's great.
And it's been pretty successful.
Welcome to Speaking of Business, conversations with Canadian innovators, entrepreneurs, and leaders. I'm Goldy Hyder, President and CEO of the Business Council of Canada. IBM has a long history in Canada. It opened its first Canadian facility nearly 100 years ago. And now it employs thousands of people, not just here in Markham, but right across the country. It was a thrill to visit with Deb Pimentel and learn more about Canada's impressive contributions to the parent company. Welcome to the podcast, Deb.
Thanks, Goldy.
So you and I have just had the pleasure of taking a full tour of your facility, parts of which have just been renovated and new and modernized. I see lots of people working in here, excited to be here. And I want to introduce IBM to our listeners for short, but I want to start with you. I want to start with you and your story and your career journey. We were talking earlier about how we were raised with parents who ran family businesses, small businesses, you know, the heartbeat of Canada in many ways. Tell me about your upbringing. Tell me about the impact that it had on you just watching your parents build a business.
Well, my parents are immigrants. They came from Portugal, more specifically the Azores. And I grew up above our grocery store. So we had a grocery store. They came to Canada in Toronto, right downtown Toronto. And so that's how I grew up. I was 6 years old working in the grocery store with my parents. They bought it. It was a small little corner store, and then we expanded from there. And so I learned a lot from working with my parents and the community around us because we were surrounded with a lot of immigrants at the time.
Tell me what you learned.
What did I learn? I learned perseverance. So they didn't know how to speak English at first. They created a community around them. They grew a small little business into, I think, a very successful community supermarket where, you know, once my dad decided to retire, there was a party for him, and he was written up in the National Post at the time because he made such an impact. So the perseverance, him thinking about different ways to do things. I like to say we were the original grocerygateway.com, right? So we used to deliver around our neighborhood. So the other thing was the patience. So day to day, he would always say to me, my parents both worked there, they would always say the customer is always right. So they would come in, it was about creating that experience for them when they came in. That's where I learned that ethic of making it about your client. And if we didn't have something, we're going to get it for you. So it was all about the experience that we were creating for our community. It was all about thinking of different ways to be different, especially as the community grew around us. Like bigger stores started to come around. How do you differentiate yourself? So all of those things.
An MBA, all in one.
Oh, yeah. So it was, and a lot of people say this, but the work ethic that I've got, I absolutely learned from my parents. They would get up early in the morning,
whatever it takes,
go to the food terminal, whatever they need to do, snowing, raining, sick, always got up because the business had to run every single day. So that I learned from my parents.
They must be so proud of you.
They are. I'm very, very proud of it was different, right? Because you're You don't know what's the Canadian identity. And then but we do want to honor our Portuguese background too. And it just became a beautiful thing as you grow up because it was one and the same. So we were allowed to celebrate our heritage, but at the same time, that is what makes Canada so great, is how diverse we are and the different backgrounds that we've got. I learned to appreciate that growing up in downtown Toronto and with my family.
It certainly seems to be our USP, isn't it?
Yes, yes.
And you must see that in the global network of IBM. And tell me a little bit about how, Canada's perceived within that network.
IBM, before it became IBM, it was, the computer tabulating company. But once it moved out of the United States, one of the first places it came to was in Canada. So we became IBM, International Business Machines. I like to say it's because of Canada. I like to say it's because of Canada. But we are very prominent. Like, we've got a very strong voice. We're not the largest country, obviously, but because we have so much here and we're so close to our headquarters, which happens to be in Armonk, we're very relevant to the organization. We also bring a lot of our leaders, global leaders, together very often, and then we make sure that we have a voice in that space.
I'm going to come back to more about IBM, but I want to come back to you before we move to other things. And that is, so you grew up the way you've described, and then you went off to university.
Yep.
How did you end up being where you are today?
First person in this generation in my family to go to university. Was determined that I wanted to do that. And then I just really
psychology, if I recall correctly.
Well,
right?
It was business and psych. I couldn't figure out what I wanted to do when I grew up.
You're not the only one.
Yeah. So, and I love studying. I love school. So I did a few things. And so the interesting thing is I fully intended on continuing school. So I wanted to do my MBA next because I loved it. And I went to a networking event at the university and met a bunch of different companies. And then I was about to leave, and I went to go grab water and started talking to this gentleman that was grabbing a water as well. And fast forward, he worked at IBM. My uncle worked for a small printing company at the time, and I had created a business card that said my name and my graduating date, like May 1995.
Available.
Yeah, available for employment, and here's my So it was like a small little resume on a business card. And I gave it to him. And then all of a sudden I got a call from him. And I'm like, IBM? Really? And so he says, can you come in and have a conversation with us? And 3 interviews later, and at the time we did entrance exams, I was an IBMer. So I finished my exam on the Friday and I started on the Monday. Now, in retrospect, I probably should have taken some time off a little bit, but I'll never forget when I got that offer because I cried and my dad did. Yeah. And the fact that he was so proud of me and what I've accomplished meant everything to me.
And here you are as the first female president of IBM Canada. What does that mean to you? It
means a lot. When I was first given, so I became the president in April timeframe. I've been at IBM for a long time. And getting here, I didn't get here from, I did one thing and then all of a sudden now I became the president. I started at IBM and I've done many different things within IBM. I've learned a lot of parts of our organization, and that was really important to me. I diversified I'd like to call it diversification of my knowledge and my skills of the company. And so I've done a few different roles. And so when I was given that role, it was one of the proudest moments because I have only been at IBM. I've only worked at IBM straight out of school. So it's such an honor you saw some of the people here. It is an incredible honor to be the leader for all of this brilliance and the talent that we have in our organization. So that's fantastic. But then you look at the first female piece of it. That one took a little bit to absorb because at first I'm like, let's not talk about the female piece. I'm the president of IBM. This is fantastic. But it is so important because I'm showing other females that it's possible, right? So that's the biggest piece for me, being the first female. It's really showing people that if you stay focused, you stay connected, you network, you learn different things, there is possibility for females and males in our society.
Tell me the role of mentors. Often when I'm speaking with women leaders, it strikes me as interesting how many times they say their main mentors were actually men.
Yeah. And I'll likely say the same thing, which is interesting. I have grown up in one would call a male-dominated industry. I wouldn't say that anymore. We're very...
Clearly not. Look who I'm looking at.
No, but our population is really good from a female-male perspective. We're very diverse. But growing up, I did have many mentors. I mean, you could start with my dad, who pushed and didn't treat you a certain way. He did push you to think differently, right? But the majority of my mentors have been males, absolutely, especially in the last little bit to get to where I am, pushing me, how do you think about things differently? So I am a very big believer in allies. I think that men should and could be allies for females and for the newer generation that's coming in. But there are also many females that I talk to all the time, whether they're peers, whether they work for me or I work for them. There are many females now, which is a really nice thing, because a lot of people ask me about the mentor piece. And so, yes, if I was to pinpoint one or two people, they are males, but there's been a lot of female in my career that have said, why can't you do it? Let's do this for us.
And you're a mentor now for many
Yes.
as well.
Yes.
And I know you've given a lot of time in particular for women,
Yes.
women leaders. And I think recently you'd even had Haley Reckenheiser here. Tell us why you did that.
Such a moment of pride. I love Haley.
Tell me a little bit about that.
So again, back to the topic of mentors and thinking about mentors and role models. So to me, the most important thing for a female or a male is to be able to see someone doing that role. So we do a lot of STEM work here. I love to bring in young girls into our organization to teach them what can they do with STEM. And what I started to realize when I was talking to the younger generation is they don't see the leaders in certain spaces. So what I'm trying to do is to build a network of females and bringing together that females that typically are in industries that maybe it's been tough in the past. Haley broke through, fantastically successful in a very male-dominated industry. So I'm looking and searching for these women to come in and talk to other women. So I'm creating a space for us to network, but not just we're networking because we're females, we're networking with purpose. So what did you have to go through? What are the ways that you broke through maybe a stigma, or how did you break through in this space where there's all males and now you're actually the, associate general manager and you're teaching these males? How do you do that? And I think it's really important for us to listen to that and learn from each other.
Well, first of all, as a father of 3 daughters, let me say thank you. It's really important. I'm going to say something controversial now.
Okay.
And that is that I have found that women are sure tough on other women.
Oh, yeah.
And women are not as supportive as you might think of other women's success. Is that fair? That's just an observation I've had. I've managed a lot of it.
Is it a fair observation?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a very
Why
fair
is
observation.
that, Deb?
I think that it's a lot to do with there may be a feeling that there aren't a lot of roles or positions out there, so I need to fight. And if there's a rule that says you need to have a female, which we should talk about, doing it on purpose, then if I'm fighting for that one role, then I need to beat you, right? Maybe that's what it is. It's also you don't see a lot of other females and you're like, oh, I need to act as if I am just like everybody else. I realized that early in my career, and it has actually been something that I'm very, very focused about breaking. So here's how I do it. I purposely try not to act as if I'm someone else. I don't want to follow a mold. I'm me. I need to be authentic to who I am, and I need to show other people that. Now let's go back to organizations and what they can do. When you sit and you say, well, we need to make sure that we hit a diversity target, so we have to have a certain amount of women. That's good. You need to do that. As an organization, you need to do it on purpose, because you have to be conscious of the fact that, are we opening the doors for a diverse population? Are we doing it on purpose? Females typically, this is a generalization, but females typically are not the ones that are putting themselves out there enough. So we actually are going out and asking, would you think about doing this? How about this, right? So we need to do that on purpose. When you just say, hey, look, I have my one token female, that's where you're going to have a lot of fighting. You need to show women that it's possible, that they don't have to fight each other, that it's all about merit. It's all about what is it that you're producing, what is it that you're giving back to the company. And you need to be open about it. So thank you for asking that question, because a lot of people kind of don't like to talk about it, but it is true. It's a competition that shouldn't be there. We need to be very aware of that. Otherwise, we won't stop it.
I'm of the view that if we don't talk about it, it will linger, and it will hold back the progress.
Yes.
But let me come back to the sector in which you are. Because again, you mentioned it. It was seen to be somewhat male-dominated for a long period of time. But we're living in a time in which some have said that we need more EQ in our leaders and not just IQ. So I was struck by your own education pedigree of being in business and being in psychology. Do you feel that this may be a time where women are better equipped to lead and help solve some of the problems that we're seeing, not just in business, but in society?
Absolutely, I do. Now, let's talk about why I did the psychology and the business. I tell people all the time, I use my psychology degree more than I use my business most of the time. Because no matter what you do, it's about people. It's about, having a conversation and understanding that person. I think that right now where we're at, that is so important. Understanding and being able to bring out what's at your core. That's how we build cultures. That's how we build organizations, people that want to work for organizations, people that want to make you successful as a leader of an organization. That is the EQ piece of it.
Yeah, the loyalty,
the
willingness.
loyalty piece, right? Like lots of changes have happened in the world over the past few years, and that piece has become more important than ever. You need to be able to, how do you connect with different people? But how do you have conversations that might be tough?
Yeah, it might be uncomfortable.
They might be uncomfortable. Yeah. In the past, we might have said, here's what you do. Let's move on. This is our strategy. There are humans behind making sure that strategy is successful, and they're all different. And so one size doesn't fit all. So there does require a lot more EQ and humanness. I call it the human factor, which is, how is it going to impact you? How do I get the most out of the people that work in this organization and make them feel like they're part of it, that they're part of the success? So to me, absolutely EQ, I think, is what's going to take us into our future of being much more successful.
Well, look, I get the chance to visit a lot of places. Let me say that, and I'm not just saying this at you because you're here, but there's a vibe here. There's an energy here. There's a feeling that people are happy to come to work and happy to be here and happy to be here together. So well done. Now, what they're doing here is actually really important.
Yes.
Not just for IBM, but for Canada. Talk to me a little bit now about the importance of IBM Canada when it comes to innovation within the IBM network.
So, the building that we're in today, this is a huge point of pride for us. This is the largest software development lab in Canada, and it is one of 3 that you were saying in the world for IBM. So what you see here is we're building software for, data, hybrid cloud, AI. That's being built here for Canadian organizations, but also for the world. So it's extremely impactful. It is a big point of pride for us. Now, this isn't the only building that differentiates us from a Canadian perspective in the global world. We also have our Bromont facility. So that's our semiconductor plant.
In Quebec.
In Quebec. So that one, we build semiconductor assembly plant, and that also is for Canadian clients, but also for the world. Because of the talent pool that we have here, we're creating jobs for people here. You also had an opportunity to meet our expert lab team. These are individuals that help our clients implement the software that they buy and be successful and get the quickest return on investment. That team is in Canada. It's one of 3 in the world. So it's a global delivery center. So they serve Canadian clients, but we also serve global clients. And that is really important because we have an incredible talent pool in this country. And it's our way of how do we bring in the talent, help them innovate, help them grow, and feel like it's not just, it is absolutely about our country, but we are very relevant on the world stage.
Yeah. What a great brand to have as a country, that you have smart people.
Yes.
Now, these smart people, you mentioned AI, are actively engaged and readying, I guess, for a world that everybody says is going to be fundamentally different. We know we're waiting to see that. People have said it could be equal to the internet having arrived. Seems like we're very much at still the starter skate, or maybe 10 meters into a long race. Where do you think we are with AI, just from a big picture perspective, before drilling down into the obvious stuff around what kind of an impact is it going to have in society and on jobs and so forth?
So I think we are at the beginning. Now, Canadians we tend to be more conservative. The good news is we've started, where most organizations are dabbling. Some larger organizations have started to implement within their companies, but we're just at the beginning of where this could be and where we could go. Organizations are using AI. If it's embedded in some of the software, they're using to summarize some meetings, those
more
types
basics.
More basics. We have a lot of organizations that are doing, for example, pilots, because they're thinking about what could AI be. But we're not seeing those pilots necessarily convert as quickly as some of the other technologies. So I think there's still they're being cautious. It's also an ever-changing environment. So we started with large language models, these big behemoth models, and now things are changing in that space, and there's lots of new players coming in. It can get very overwhelming. And so what we tend to tell clients is, do something small, prove it out, helps productivity, and then let's move forward. Is it new? This is new, and it's something that everyone is talking about. But we've been doing AI
decades.
For decades.
For decades.
We've been doing it for a long time. I think the newness of it is how much everybody has embraced it.
Tell me more about the human element, because, of course, one of the things, the anxiety that people feel when technology advances, they want the benefits of it all, but they're also very concerned about the impact on me, but particularly my job.
Yeah.
History shows that they actually shouldn't be too worried that skills change and new jobs become available. But is that going to be the case with AI? Are we going to see really a reduction of career opportunities or job opportunities because they will be automated? And what's going to happen to those people?
I don't believe there'll be a reduction because of AI. I believe there'll be a change because of AI. So what you're doing today, we're going to be absolutely, there's jobs that are, that people may have. They're doing, redundant tasks. Like they're doing some tasks that can be replaced with AI. It's very easy. We want that. That's progress. That's automation.
That's part of the productivity argument.
Absolutely, right? However, the important thing here is the world is changing. And I think there's more opportunity with AI coming in, doing different things, thinking differently, innovating differently. So I think there will always be opportunities. I think that this now just opens up the opportunity for people to do different things and to do it in a different way, think differently. So as people need to stop saying, oh, we're going to lose our jobs, because that keeps you in today. You have to think of what the future will bring and the opportunity that AI is going to bring to everyone. It'll touch everybody. And so how can you take that and do something different, a little bit more innovative, a little bit more productive for your organization? How do I help my company grow differently? So I'll give you an example. At IBM, we implemented something called Ask HR. So that was one of the areas that we implemented AI. And so you could say, oh, there's a lot of people in HR that their jobs they're gone. So yes, so a lot of the tasks that people were asking day to day, common all the time asking these, there was always an individual there that we had to go
Insurance questions or whatever.
Exactly, right? So your background, insurance questions. These things can be answered with AI. So we've had over 2 million requests come through Ask HR, which is, it's an assistant.
So people are using it.
Right? They're absolutely using it. And 94 to 95% accuracy. We don't need anybody else. But now what we've been able to do? We're doing creative and different things with those HR people. We've retrained them. So the biggest piece about AI is retraining, skilling. So constantly be learning.
Whose job is that?
I think it's the individual's job. I think, for me, I'm constantly learning constantly. So I would suggest that each individual should constantly be learning and reading. You can't go anywhere without seeing something about AI these days. So make sure that you're learning. However, it is also the organization's responsibility because we want to make sure that we're getting the most out of our employees. We want them to be successful because if they're successful, we're successful. We are very much focused at IBM on training. Training is what I've always done. The amount of years that I've been here, 29 years that I've been here, we are always focused on training our employees, and that has not stopped. If anything, it's become, if you ask, any IBMer, we're always learning.
Well, it reminds me of a saying someone had said, you won't lose your job to AI. You will lose your job to someone who knows how to use AI.
That's good. Yes.
It's, the other thing, of course, is partners like universities and colleges and government also have a role to play in skills. Right?
Absolutely.
Now, we talked about the opportunities. Let's talk a little bit about the risks, because there is a constituency of people out there who are saying, oh my God, we've got to regulate and manage and control this in some way, shape, or form. First of all, is it even possible to do that? And secondly, will that in some way do more harm than good if it constrains the creativity and the utilization and the ingenuity behind it all?
I do believe that there needs to be governance around AI. And I believe that it needs to be done with organizations, with government, with academic institutions, because we're all talking about it. We go across Canada meeting different people in universities. This is what they're studying. This is what, there's a big passion out there for AI. But you do need to have governance around it. You don't want to stifle innovation. You want people to be very, very creative. But as we have a responsibility there are a lot of regulated organizations as well. You need to be able to explain where the information is coming from. How did you come up with this? So we do believe that governance is important, and we do believe that open conversations with academia and with governments is extremely important. So just keep on talking about it. We want innovation, don't want to stifle that. But you need to have governance around how you deploy AI in your organizations.
Let's talk about, to conclude, something you and I share a great passion for, and that is love of Canada. You talked about it right off the top, being a first-generation Canadian. Tell me a little bit about how you see our country in terms of where we are in the world, what it means to be Canadian. What are your hopes for this country?
I am so proud of being a Canadian, and I think that probably has to do with my family, who is incredibly proud of being Canadians. I asked my dad the other day, and he's like, when we came here, we came for growth opportunities. We came here for, the promise of being able to do better for your family and give opportunity. And then he said, we always thought we would go back, and then we just never wanted to. And this is our home. They are Canadians. They are not Portuguese citizens. They're Canadian citizens. And that pride is something that I've always had. And now that I get to work with global organizations, and in the role that I'm in, I get to meet a lot of those Canadians. And so one of the things that I do is I get to go across and talk to students or, people that are earlier on in their careers. There is an incredible amount of talent here. Right across the country. And so that talent, one of my biggest passions is how do we create opportunity for those people to want to work for Canadian organizations and give back to the Canadian people. So how do we make sure I do it on purpose? I make sure that I'm going and I'm creating an environment where it's exciting for this next generation to come in and want to work here in Canada for Canada. And that you don't have to go anywhere else. You can be right here with a lot of really smart people, and you can do things for companies outside of Canada too, right here on our own land. So to me, it is really important for us to create an environment and to create spaces for our own people to be successful, right? And that also means we need to create and think bigger. We need to stop being so conservative, and we need to be loud and proud. I say that to my team all the time, loud and proud. Let's get out there, because it's incredible how many fantastic things we do that we don't talk about. We should want people to see that and to want to come and work with us.
I feel like we bring it on the ice. It's all about winning hockey.
Yes.
If we could take that same mentality and put it to our economy and our country. And the importance of celebrating success.
Absolutely.
I think culturally, we sometimes have that syndrome of being next to the giant.
Yeah.
And we need to learn a little bit from them on some of the things that they've used to their advantage. And part of that is the moxie to say, yeah, we're the best.
Absolutely.
And if we're not, we're going to try to be.
Yes. And by the way, here's the other thing. This is an example. We create a lot of interesting things here. And then we don't scale. Nice.
Yeah.
We're so nice. And then somebody else comes and sees it and they, whoa, let me take this and make this something. And all of a sudden it becomes their idea. We need to stop that, right? We need to make sure that we take credit for the things that we're doing. And it really does, it's on all of us to make sure that we're loud and that we say, look at the things that we're doing. We should be extremely proud of what we have here, not only from a talent perspective, but the resources that we have. We need to be much more passionate about that and vocal about it. Not just it's cold up there, isn't it?
Well, look, thank you for being both vocal and passionate about this on this podcast. We've gotten through all the easy questions. Now comes the fun part, the rapid fire questions. These are usually tougher than the other questions I've asked you. So I'm just going to fire away and you can give me your answers. Your favorite sports team?
The Toronto Maple Leafs. I have to say it's the Toronto
Really?
Maple Leafs.
That's the
Yeah,
wrong
I
answer,
know.
but
See,
okay.
I knew you were going to give me that, but it is. I have my parents, my family. I have a picture of myself cheering them on when I was 9 months old. So
it's part of the belonging thing, isn't it?
Yeah,
You gotta like
and
hockey.
It's perseverance too.
Yes, there is that. Someday.
Yes.
I think the last time was when I was born, the year I was born. Best way to relax on the weekend?
I love going up north to my cottage, which is small, and I get to spend time with my family and read and look at the water. Love it.
Your best place to spend a vacation?
It's the Azores. I love going back. We go back every couple of years. I love going back home.
Your favorite book genre?
So there's two. I really do like business books, leadership specifically.
Well, you and I share a lot in common.
Yeah, I love that. I could just read and read on that. So that's what I enjoy reading.
Is there one that you like in particular?
The latest one that I read was Setting the Table by Danny Mayer. So I like that one because it blends how is he running a business, the efficiency, it's a really good book. He's got many Michelin star restaurants, and it just talks about execution, about the importance of the client and putting the client at the center of everything that you do. So I really do love that book. And then I happen to, because of that, I watched that series, The Bear. Have you watched that one?
I've not, no.
So it's really interesting because it's very high, it's very intense environment because it's all about trying to be as perfect as you can.
Yeah.
But doing it with the client in the humanness of it. So that's the latest one that I read that I enjoyed.
Good segue to what's your favorite food?
Oh, it's bad that I'm not going to say Portuguese, but it's sushi. Love, could eat it every day.
And finally, you're in Toronto. What's the part about Toronto that you love the most?
Well, I love the diversity of Toronto. If I'd say one particular area of Toronto that I absolutely love is down by the water, specifically around the Ontario Place area.
Nice.
Because that's where I used to, when I was in university and doing these multiple courses, I'd go down there to clear my mind and to just, it's a beautiful view of the city too, so.
Well, look, you've given us a lot to think about, so there'd be no clearing minds for people listening to this podcast, but thank you for joining us and thank you for sharing.
Thank you so much for having me.
Deb Pimentel is the President and General Manager of Technology for IBM Canada. You can see photos and videos from our tour of the IBM lab on our website at thebusinesscouncil.ca/podcasts. If you'd like to hear more of our Speaking of Business conversations with innovators, leaders, and entrepreneurs, why not subscribe? Search for Speaking of Business wherever you get your podcasts. And while you're there, please give us a review. We'd love to hear what you think. Until next time, I'm Goldy Hyder. Thanks for joining us.